Here's a question for you. If you were running a losing war and the only card left in your hand was a teenage boy with a dragon, would you actually hand him over to the enemy? Lord Ormund Hightower didn't. And the way he pulled it off is one of the sharpest pieces of misdirection the show has ever attempted. House of the Dragon Season 3, Episode 3, gave us a hostage exchange that looked simple on the surface. Daemon Targaryen shows up with 3 dragons. Ormund Hightower is outnumbered, outfired, and out of options. He bends a knee. He hands over a silver-haired boy identified as Daeron Targaryen, the youngest son of Alicent and the late King Viserys. Daemon flies him back to King's Landing like he just won the war in a single afternoon. He didn't. He got played. And so did a chunk of the audience, but not everyone. A lot of viewers clocked this one before the credits even rolled. And today we're breaking down exactly how the show telegraphed it, why the swap even worked, what the internet got wrong about it, and where this whole storyline actually comes from, because, spoiler, it's not from the book people assume. Let's start with the obvious tell, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Daeron's dragon is named Tessarion, sometimes called the Blue Queen. When Ormund calls the boy forward and says his name, Tessarion reacts. Not violently, not dramatically, just a flicker of confusion, like she's hearing a name that doesn't belong to the person standing in front of her. Dragons in this universe are bonded to a single rider. That bond isn't decorative. It's practically a plot device at this point in the franchise. So when the real Daeron walks toward Daemon and his own dragon barely reacts, that's not a small detail. That's the show quietly telling you the truth while Daemon completely misses it. And here's the part that should have set off alarms for Daemon specifically. This is a man who has spent 2 entire seasons obsessing over dragon numbers, dragon riders, and which house controls which beast. He takes a hostage who supposedly commands a dragon, and he doesn't ask for the dragon. He just leaves Tessarion behind with the Hightower army. For a character this paranoid about dragon politics, that's a strange thing to overlook unless the writers wanted us to notice the oversight too. Some fans online have picked apart this exact moment. There's a widely shared clip of Tessarion just standing there, completely unbothered, while her supposed rider gets taken away. Viewers on social media flagged it almost instantly, joking that the dragon's reaction alone gave away the whole scheme. One popular comment framed it like the dragon was thinking, "That's not my rider, but I'm going to mind my own business." It's become a bit of a meme in the fan community, and honestly, it's a fair point. If dragons are this loyal, this dragon's calm reaction should have been a 5-alarm fire for Daemon. Now, was this a mistake by the writers, or a deliberate clue? That's actually been debated. Some critics have called it a legitimate plot hole, arguing that a seasoned rider like Daemon would absolutely have picked up on a dragon not responding to her supposed rider being led away. Others argue it's intentional dramatic irony, letting the audience see something the characters can't, because Daemon and Rhaenyra have never actually met the real Daeron and have no baseline to compare him to. Either reading works. But the fact that fans are still arguing about it a couple of days after the episode aired tells you the writers hit a nerve, whether they meant to or not. Here's the second clue, and this one is sneakier because it happened an entire episode earlier. In the season's very first episode, there's a brief scene of a squire attending to Ormund Hightower. Green clothing, reddish-brown hair, quiet, background presence. Most casual viewers scrolled right past it. But that squire is very likely the real Daeron, hiding in plain sight before the show even bothered to name him. And that hair color is the whole key to the scheme. Most Targaryens are famous for platinum blonde hair, practically a family trademark. But Daeron takes after his mother, Alicent, with auburn hair instead. That's why Ormund's plan is actually clever instead of just lazy. He can't pass off the real Daeron as a hostage without giving away a Targaryen with an actual claim to the throne and an actual dragon. But he can dye a random boy's hair platinum blonde, tell him to keep his mouth shut, and hand him over as a decoy. Nobody in King's Landing has met the real Daeron. Nobody has a photograph to compare him to. The only person who could immediately spot the fraud is his own mother. And that's exactly how the twist unravels. It's not really the dragon that blows the cover, even though the dragon is the fun detail everyone likes to point at. It's Alicent. When Rhaenyra brings her in to identify her son, Alicent's face gives it away before she says a single word. She knows immediately that this isn't her child. That reaction is the actual confirmation. It's a quietly devastating scene, because Alicent has to sit there and process that her real son is still a hostage of a war she started, while a random terrified boy is sitting in front of her, wearing bleached hair and pretending to be him. Yes. Oh, why would Ormund even risk this? Because it buys him something enormous: time. By handing over a fake, he gets to look like he's surrendering, march his army out of danger, and secretly redirect his real forces to seize the town of Tumbleton, a strategically important location close to King's Landing. It's a full misdirection play. Rhaenyra thinks she's neutralized a threat and secured a hostage. In reality, she's been handed a decoy, while Ormund quietly repositions for a much bigger move. By the time the truth comes out, the damage is already done. There's also a detail worth mentioning about how HBO handled the casting here. For months before the season even aired, fans were trying to figure out who was playing Daeron, and there were conflicting reports and casting rumors floating around online. Some outlets spotted an actor's name attached to the role on international streaming listings, but the network never confirmed anything directly. That silence turned out to be intentional. It let the show set up this exact bait-and-switch without spoiling it in advance, and a lot of the most engaged fans were already speculating about a decoy before the episode even dropped, purely based on the casting mystery. Now here's where this gets genuinely interesting for anyone who's read George R.R. Martin's other work, because this exact type of swap has a long history in this universe, and it didn't originate in this show. Back in the original Game of Thrones series, Theon Greyjoy pulls a version of this trick when he loses track of Bran and Rickon Stark. Instead of admitting he lost his hostages, he burns 2 farm boys and passes off the bodies as the missing Stark children. It's brutal, it's desperate, and it buys him exactly the kind of short-term cover Ormund is going for here. But the more direct parallel actually comes from the books, not the show, and it never made it on a Game of Thrones at all. In Martin's novels, when Arya Stark goes missing, Peter Baelish doesn't just give up. He grabs a girl named Jeyne Poole, a childhood friend of Sansa Stark, and forces her to pose as Arya. Jeyne gets sent off to marry Ramsay Bolton under a false identity, and it's Jeyne, not Sansa, who suffers through that nightmare marriage in the books. The show simplified this by just sending the real Sansa instead, which changed the story significantly and honestly cut one of the more disturbing threads in the whole saga. And there's a third layer to this, which is where things get really speculative and really fun for book readers. There's a long-running fan theory around a character in the novels known as Young Griff, who claims to be the son of Rhaenyra Targaryen and therefore a legitimate heir to the throne. A huge portion of the fan base believes he's not who he says he is. The popular theory is that he's actually descended from the Blackfyres, a rival branch of the Targaryen line that has started multiple rebellions throughout the history of this world. If that theory is true, then the fake Daeron plot on the show is essentially a compressed, sped-up version of a mystery Martin has been building in his books for over a decade, one that still hasn't been resolved because the next novel hasn't been released yet. So in a strange way, the show may have just beaten the books to the punch on a mistaken identity twist that's been simmering in this universe for years, just compacted into a single episode instead of stretched across an entire saga. Going forward, this decision changes the entire shape of the war. The real Daeron is still out there, still bonded to a fully grown dragon, and still under Ormund's control at Tumbleton. That means there's an active, untested dragon rider sitting on the board that Rhaenyra doesn't currently have a plan for. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra made the call to spare the fake Daeron's life rather than execute him, choosing to send him to the Night's Watch instead, a decision that tells you a lot about the kind of ruler she's trying to be in contrast to how her rivals have been operating. If you're the kind of viewer who likes catching these details before the reveal hits, that dragon reaction shot is exactly the kind of storytelling to watch for going forward. This show has a track record of hiding its biggest turns in small physical reactions instead of dialogue, and this episode is a pretty clean example of that. So here's my question for you before you go. Did you catch the Tessarion clue in real time, or did Alicent's reaction get you first? Drop it in the comments, because I want to know how many of you actually called this before it happened. And if you want the next breakdown, the moment Tumbleton actually kicks off, that's exactly what's coming next on this channel. So make sure you're subscribed for it.